The massive space station gleamed like a jewel against the dark void of space. Ambassador Jake Harrison looked out through the viewing port at the incredible structure that housed the Galactic Council. Hundreds of different alien ships docked at various levels, each one representing a species that had achieved faster than light, traveled thousands of years before humans had even discovered fire. Jake adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time before entering the council chamber. He had practiced his speech dozens of times during the long journey from Earth. Today was the day humanity would offer their knowledge and experience to help protect the galaxy. He carried with him detailed reports about human military tactics, defensive strategies, and combat innovations that had been refined through centuries of conflict on Earth. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in concentric circles to accommodate the vastly different body types of the 47 member species. Jake walked to the center podium, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Around him, alien representatives chatted among themselves in their various languages, the universal translators creating a constant hum of converted speech. Admiral Lisa Carter sat in the human delegation area, watching Jake approach the podium. She had served in Earth's Space Navy for 25 years and had seen combat in the asteroid belt conflicts. The military reports she had helped prepare contained hard-won knowledge about ship-to-ship combat, boarding actions, and defensive formations that had cost thousands of human lives. To learn that, Council Speaker Zixthara rose from her crystalline throne at the head of the chamber. Her body was made of what looked like living diamond, reflecting the chamber's lights in brilliant patterns. She had ruled the council for over 3 centuries and had seen dozens of younger species petition for membership and recognition. The human delegation may present their proposal, Zixthara announced, her voice carrying easily through the chamber despite sounding like wind chimes. Jake cleared his throat and began. Honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity comes before you today with an offer of partnership and cooperation. We wish to share our military knowledge and tactical experience with the Council's peacekeeping forces. A ripple of what could only be described as amusement passed through the assembled delegates. The Vorthan representative, a 6-limbed creature covered in blue fur, actually started giggling. The sound was high-pitched and continuous, like a malfunctioning machine. Jake continued despite the interruption. Human military doctrine has been developed through extensive real-world experience. We have fought wars on land, sea, air, and space. Our tactical innovations include combined arms coordination, adaptive battlefield strategies, and rapid response protocols. The giggling from the Vorthan delegate grew louder, and soon other representatives joined in. The Serpentine Naga delegates began making a hissing sound that their translator identified as laughter. Even the normally stoic ethereals, beings of pure energy contained in mechanical suits, began pulsing with colors that indicated amusement. High Counselor Thranks of the Precursor Remnants stood up slowly. His species was ancient beyond measure, having ruled the galaxy when most other species were still crawling out of their primordial oceans. His voice carried the weight of millions of years of accumulated wisdom. Young human, Thranks said, his tone patronizing. Your species has existed for merely 200,000 years. The Galactic Council has maintained peace throughout this galaxy for over 50 million years. What could a species that has barely learned to leave its home planet possibly teach us about warfare or peacekeeping? The laughter grew louder. Jake felt his face flush with embarrassment, but he pressed on. We understand that humanity is young compared to your great civilizations. However, we believe that our unique perspective on conflict resolution and our innovative approaches to military challenges could complement your existing capabilities. Dr. Amy Foster watched from the gallery, her heart sinking as she saw her life's work falling apart. She had spent 15 years building relationships with various alien species, learning their languages and cultures, all in preparation for this moment when humanity would join the galactic community as equals. Instead, she was watching her. Species being treated like children. The Cytherian representative, a proud bird-like creature with brilliant golden feathers, spread his wings and spoke in a voice like singing. Perhaps the humans would be better suited for sanitation duties on our stations. Their small ships might be useful for waste collection. This comment brought the loudest laughter yet. Even some of the more serious delegates were struggling to contain their amusement. The crystalline beings of the hegemony worlds created a sound like breaking glass as they laughed. The gaseous inhabitants of the Nebula Collective pulsed with colors that hurt to look at. Jake looked down at his carefully prepared notes. The pages contained detailed analyses of human military history, from ancient battlefield tactics to modern space combat techniques. He had examples of human innovation under pressure, stories of impossible victories achieved through determination and creative thinking, and proposals for joint training exercises that could benefit both humans and alien forces. Admiral Carter stood up in the delegation area. "If I may address the Council," she said, her voice cutting through the laughter. "Human military forces have achieved a 97% mission success rate in our most recent conflicts. Our casualty ratios in defensive actions are among the most favorable in recorded military history." This only brought more laughter. A delegate from the ancient Keeper civilization, beings who looked like walking trees, creaked out what passed for humor among his people. "Impressive statistics for conflicts against your own species. Tell us, Admiral, how many galactic-class threats has humanity defeated?" Carter's jaw tightened. "None yet, but we believe our experience with asymmetric warfare and our adaptability in combat situations would prove valuable against any threat." Speaker Zixthara raised one crystalline hand for silence. "The Council appreciates humanity's enthusiasm. However, we must consider the vast difference in experience and capability between your forces and our established peacekeeping fleets. Our vessels have maintained order for millennia. Our tactical doctrines have been tested across 1,000 different conflict scenarios." Jake realized that nothing he could say would change their minds. These beings had achieved technological marvels that humanity could barely comprehend. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days, their weapons could crack planets, and their civilizations had endured longer than human recorded history. From their perspective, humanity must seem like toddlers trying to teach adults how to walk. But Jake also realized something else. In all their talk of maintaining peace and order, none of these species had mentioned actual combat experience. Their peacekeeping seemed to consist mainly of mediating disputes between member worlds and enforcing trade agreements. When was the last time any of them had faced a real threat? The Vorthan delegate was still giggling as he spoke. "Perhaps we could find the humans a nice quiet system to guard, somewhere far from important trade routes where they could practice their little war games without bothering anyone." Jake closed his portfolio with deliberate care. He looked around the chamber one last time, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as possible. "Very well," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quieting chamber. "Humanity withdraws its application for military cooperation with the Galactic Council. We thank you for your time and consideration. We will remember your wisdom." The silence that followed was profound. Jake turned and walked out of the chamber, followed by Admiral Carter and the rest of the human delegation. Dr. Foster gathered her research materials with shaking hands. 20 years of work suddenly meaningless. As the humans left the alien delegates resumed their conversations, already forgetting about the brief interruption to their day. They had more important matters to discuss after all. The humans were just another young species that needed to learn their place in the galaxy. The human embassy on Council Station 7 was the first to close. Ambassador Jake Harrison, personally oversaw the packing of 20 years of diplomatic archives, cultural exchange programs, and trade agreements. The alien staff, who had worked alongside humans for decades, watched in confusion as their colleagues methodically dismantled everything that connected Earth to the galactic community. Captain Roy Martinez received his orders 3 days after the council meeting. His exploration vessel New Horizon had been charting the Outer Rim territories for 5 years, working with Zephyrian archaeologists to map ancient ruins on dead worlds. Now he was told to return immediately and prepare for departure from Council space. All human personnel are to withdraw from Council territories within 6 months, the message from Earth Command stated. No exceptions, no delays. Complete evacuation of all facilities, research stations, and colonial outposts. Roy read the orders twice before calling his crew together. Most of them had never lived anywhere but space, moving from one Council station to another as they worked on joint exploration projects. Chief Engineer Paul Stevens had been born on a human research station orbiting the crystalline homeworld. Navigation Officer Carol Davis had spent her entire adult life working with alien crews on deep space missions. What about the Titan VII colony? Carol asked. There are 50,000 people living there. Where are they supposed to go? Roy looked at the detailed evacuation schedules that had been transmitted along with the orders. New colony ships are being constructed. Everyone will be relocated to human-controlled systems. Dr. Susan Blake was in the middle of translating ancient precursor texts when the evacuation order reached her. She had been working with a team of Zephyrian scholars for 8 years, slowly deciphering records that might explain what had happened to the original builders of the galaxy's most advanced technology. The work was delicate and required constant collaboration between human and alien experts. You cannot simply leave, her Zephyrian colleague Kethvara protested. We are on the verge of a breakthrough. The texts speak of a great threat that destroyed the precursors. This knowledge could be vital for all species. Susan carefully packed her research materials and translation equipment. I have my orders. All human research projects are being terminated immediately. The Zephyrian's feathered crest drooped in disappointment. But surely your government understands the importance of this work. Susan paused in her packing. She had dedicated her career to understanding alien cultures and fostering cooperation between species. The idea of abandoning everything she had worked for felt like betraying her life's purpose. But she also remembered the laughter in the council chamber and the dismissive way the alien delegates had treated Jake Harrison's offer. Perhaps they do understand, she said quietly. Perhaps they understand that some partnerships are not meant to be. Commander Rick Davis oversaw the evacuation of Titan VII, the agricultural world that humans had spent 15 years terraforming. The planet had been classified as uninhabitable by Council standards when humanity first requested permission to settle there. The atmosphere was too thin, the soil too acidic, and the climate too unstable for most galactic species. But humans had seen potential where others saw problems. They had introduced earth plants that could survive in harsh conditions, built atmospheric processors to thicken the air, and developed new farming techniques that turned barren ground into fertile fields. Within a decade, Titan VII was producing enough food to supply 6 neighboring star systems. Now the farm stood empty, their automated systems slowly shutting down as the last transport ships carried away the colonists. Rick watched from the yaw. Command Center, as decades of human effort was simply abandoned. The orbital stations that had coordinated the terraforming efforts were powered down and left adrift in space. What will happen to the crops? Asked Lieutenant Amy Walker, his communications officer. Rick checked the status reports from across the planet. The automated systems will keep everything running for about 6 months. After that, without maintenance, everything will start to fail. The council initially celebrated the human withdrawal. Speaker Zixthara announced to the assembled delegates that the disruption caused by human participation in galactic affairs could finally end. The hegemony worlds immediately filed claims for the abandoned human territories, while the Naga Collective began making plans to strip mine the empty colonies for useful materials. Finally, we can return to proper governance, declared High Counselor Thranks. The constant questions and suggestions from these young humans were becoming tiresome. Now, we can focus on maintaining the stability that has served the galaxy for millions of years. But not everyone was pleased with the human departure. Dr. Helen Murphy, the Council's chief xenocultural analyst, had spent months studying human military history and social development. Her research had led her to some disturbing conclusions about what humanity's withdrawal might mean for galactic security. Helen's report was filed in the Council archives with minimal attention. Most delegates were too busy dividing up former human territories to read detailed analyses of human warfare. But her findings painted a picture of a species unlike any other in the galaxy. Human military doctrine is fundamentally different from all known galactic species, she had written. While other civilizations fight for specific objectives such as territory, resources, or political control, humans appear to wage war with the goal of completely eliminating future threats. Their concept of total war involves mobilizing entire populations and all available resources toward achieving absolute victory. The report included examples from human history that made Helen increasingly worried about the Council's decision to reject human cooperation. She had studied the human response to existential threats and found patterns that suggested humanity would not simply accept defeat or subjugation. When threatened with extinction, humans had consistently demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice everything to ensure their survival. Captain Roy Martinez transmitted the final human message as his ship New Horizon crossed the boundary of Council space. This is the exploration vessel New Horizon, departing Council territory as requested. Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for its guidance and hospitality over the past decades. We will trouble you no further with our presence. The message was broadcast on all Council frequencies, ensuring that every member world would receive it. Roy had debated whether to add anything else, perhaps a warning about the consequences of dismissing humanity so completely, but decided that simple courtesy was the better approach. Paul Stevens monitored the ship's sensors as they left the last Council monitoring station behind. That's it then. We're officially outside Council jurisdiction. Roy nodded, looking at the star charts that showed their course toward the hidden human colonies that had been established in secret over the past several years. While the Council had been focused on the human territories they knew about, Earth's government had been quietly preparing for this possibility. Set course for Haven Prime, Roy ordered. Time to see what humanity has been building while the Council wasn't watching. The evacuation was completed exactly on schedule. 6 months after Jake Harrison's humiliation before the Galactic Council, not a single human remained in Council space. Research stations that had operated for decades were abandoned. Trade relationships that had benefited both sides were severed, and diplomatic channels that had taken years to establish were closed. Dr. Helen Murphy's concerns about the human withdrawal were buried in Council bureaucracy, filed away with thousands of other reports that delegates never bothered to read. The aliens had gotten what they wanted, a galaxy free from human interference and suggestions. But as Helen had warned in her ignored report, humanity's departure was not a surrender or an admission of inferiority. It was a strategic withdrawal by a species that had learned valuable lessons about galactic politics and alien capabilities. The humans had spent their time in Council space carefully observing and learning, gathering intelligence about every member species' strengths and weaknesses. Now they were gone, disappeared into the vast emptiness of space with knowledge that no other species realized they possessed. The Council had rejected humanity's offer of partnership, but they had also revealed their own limitations and vulnerabilities to a species that specialized in turning weaknesses into advantages. The galaxy seemed peaceful and stable as it had for millions of years. But somewhere in the darkness, between the stars, humanity was preparing for whatever came next. 2 years passed in peaceful silence across Council space. Trade routes operated smoothly between member worlds. Diplomatic disputes were resolved through proper channels, and the ancient traditions of galactic governance continued unchanged. Speaker Zixthara often remarked to other Council members about how much more efficiently things ran without constant interruptions from the young human species. The abandoned human territories had been quickly redistributed among Council members. The hegemony worlds claimed most of the former research stations, while the Naga Collective had begun mining operations on the empty colonies. Titan VII's automated farms continued producing food for several months before the systems finally failed without human maintenance. High Counselor Thranks frequently used humanity's departure as an example of why the Council's traditional methods were superior. Young species must learn their place, he would say during Council sessions. The humans have accepted that they are not ready for true galactic responsibility. Agent Kelly Brown was monitoring deep space communications from a hidden human listening post in the Void sector when the first distress signals arrived. The post was one of dozens that humanity had secretly established along the edges of Council space, designed to gather intelligence about galactic affairs while remaining completely undetected. The signals were faint and badly distorted, coming from the outer rim colonies of the Vorthan Republic. Kelly had learned the Vorthan language during her years as a diplomatic translator, and what she heard in those broken transmissions made her blood run cold. Colony 7 is gone, the panicked voice repeated. They took everything. The entire planet is just empty space now. Nothing left but debris. Kelly immediately transmitted the intercepts to Haven Prime, the hidden world that now served as humanity's secret capital. President Mac Johnson read the reports in his secure office, surrounded by intelligence analysts who had spent 2 years studying Council military capabilities from a distance. "What do we know about these devourers?" Johnson asked General Lisa. Hayes, the former Admiral Carter, who had resigned her Council diplomatic position after the humiliation before the alien delegates. Hayes pulled up holographic displays, showing the scattered reports they had gathered. Very little. They appeared without warning in Vorthan space 6 weeks ago. Their technology is completely unknown. They don't seem to conquer planets in any traditional sense. "What do you mean?" Johnson asked. "They consume them completely. The planets themselves are gone, leaving nothing but empty space and scattered debris. It's like they're feeding on matter itself." More distress signals arrived over the following days. The Devourers were moving systematically through Vorthan space, consuming one colony after another. The Vorthan military, which had laughed so loudly at human military proposals 2 years earlier, proved completely helpless against the alien invaders. Captain Sarah Miller commanded the human intelligence vessel Shadow Walker, a ship designed for stealth reconnaissance that could observe Council space without being detected. She watched from a safe distance as Vorthan warships engaged the Devourers near the Kepler Nexus. The battle was over in minutes. The Vorthan vessels, proud ships that had maintained peace in their sector for centuries, were simply absorbed by the strange enemy craft. Sarah recorded everything, transmitting the tactical data back to human military analysts who were struggling to understand what they were seeing. "Their ships adapt," Sarah reported. "Every weapon the Vorthans used became less effective with each shot. It's like the enemy was learning and adjusting their defenses in real time." Dr. Tony Adams monitored Council military communications from another hidden listening post. As a former xenolinguist who had worked on Council Station 7, he could understand the increasingly desperate transmissions between Council fleets and their command centers. "They're asking for human tactical manuals," Tony reported to his superiors. "Several Council species are specifically requesting any military documentation that humanity might have left behind." The irony was not lost on human leadership. The same aliens who had mocked human military knowledge were now desperately seeking human solutions to a threat they could not comprehend. The Devourer advance continued relentlessly. The crystalline homeworld of Speaker Zixthara was consumed in a matter of hours, despite being defended by some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The ancient precursor dreadnoughts, massive ships that had awed humanity during first contact, were methodically torn apart by adaptive weapons that learned from each encounter. President Johnson convened emergency sessions with human military leaders as the scope of the Devourer threat became clear. General Ben Parker, who had been quietly developing new human military doctrines during their exile, presented his analysis of the situation. "The Council species fight like they're conducting a business negotiation," Parker explained. "They have rules, protocols, and established procedures for everything. Their military tactics haven't changed in thousands of years because they've never faced a real existential threat." "And the Devourers?" Johnson asked. "They're exactly the kind of enemy that Council tactics can't handle. They don't follow rules, they don't respond to diplomacy, and they adapt faster than traditional military doctrine can counter them." Commander Alex Wright had been studying the tactical data from Sarah Miller's reconnaissance missions. As a former Council liaison officer, he understood both human and alien military thinking, and what he saw in the battle recordings confirmed his worst fears. "The Council fleets are trying to fight a total war using peacekeeping tactics," Wright reported. "They're designed to control territory and maintain order, not to completely destroy an adaptive enemy that threatens their very existence." Breaking point came when the Devourers reached the core worlds. High Counselor Threnx himself, the ancient being who had dismissed humanity so completely, transmitted a message on emergency channels that were broadcast to every human settlement. The Council could locate. Dr. Carol Davis intercepted the transmission at the Haven Prime Communications Center. The proud, condescending tone that had characterized Threnx's previous dealings with humanity was completely gone, replaced by something that sounded very much like desperation. "This is High Counselor Threnx of the Galactic Council, transmitting on all frequencies to human territories," the message began. "We request immediate assistance. The precursor homeworld has fallen. Our traditional military forces are inadequate against this threat. We need human military advisors and tactical expertise." The message was repeated in a dozen different languages, including several human dialects that the Council had previously dismissed as primitive. It was clear that the aliens were casting the widest possible net, hoping that some human settlement would receive and respond to their plea. President Johnson read the message in his office on Haven Prime, flanked by portraits of the human ambassadors, who had been humiliated before the Council 3 years earlier. Jake Harrison had died the previous year, bitter and unforgiving about his treatment by the galactic community. Admiral Carter had refused all contact with her former alien colleagues. Humanity had not been idle during their exile from Council space. While the aliens had been congratulating themselves on removing the disruptive human element from galactic politics, human engineers and military strategists had been working around the clock to prepare for exactly this kind of scenario. General Parker unveiled the results of their secret preparations to the Human Leadership Council. The new Human Defense Fleet incorporated lessons learned from studying every Council species' military capabilities and weaknesses, combined with the brutal efficiency that had always characterized human warfare. "We assumed from the beginning that we would eventually face an existential threat alone," Parker explained. "Every ship, every weapon, Every tactical doctrine has been designed with one goal in mind: complete victory against any enemy that threatens human survival. The ships themselves bore no resemblance to the vessels that had left Council space 3 years earlier. They were built not for exploration or peacekeeping, but for one purpose: killing efficiently and surviving to kill again. The weapons systems. Incorporated technologies reverse engineered from abandoned Council equipment, improved through human engineering, and refined through human tactical thinking. President Johnson looked around the room at his advisors and military leaders. These were people who had been dismissed as primitive and crude by beings who claimed millions of years of superior wisdom. Now those same beings were begging for help from the species they had rejected. The decision was not immediate. There were those who argued that humanity should simply ignore the Council's plea and focus on defending their own hidden colonies. Others suggested that this was an opportunity to demonstrate human superiority and extract concessions from the SFR. Desperate aliens. But in the end, the choice was made based on a simple calculation. If the Devourers consumed the entire Council civilization, they would eventually turn their attention to human space. Better to fight them now, while some alien forces remained to serve as allies, than to face them alone later when they had grown even stronger. The response was transmitted on the same emergency frequencies that had carried Thrinx's desperate plea. The human fleet that assembled at Haven Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Kate Foster stood on the bridge of the flagship Vengeance, watching as hundreds of warships took their positions in formation. These vessels bore no resemblance to the exploration ships and research vessels that had left Council space 3 years earlier. Kate was the daughter of Dr. Amy Foster, the xenobiologist who had watched her life's work crumble during Jake Harrison's humiliation before the Council. But where her mother had sought understanding and cooperation with alien species, Kate had chosen a different path. She had spent the years of human exile preparing for war. Fleet status report, Kate ordered as her command staff took their positions. Commander Dan Wilson, her tactical officer, consulted his displays. 247 combat vessels ready for deployment. All ships equipped with adaptive weapon systems and quantum disruption technology. Troop transports standing by with 50,000 ground assault Marines. The ships themselves were a testament to human engineering and tactical thinking. While Council vessels were designed for multiple purposes, like exploration, diplomacy, and peacekeeping, these human warships had been built for one mission: complete destruction of enemy forces. Every system, every weapon, every piece of equipment was focused on killing efficiently and surviving to fight again. General Ben Parker had overseen the development of the new human military doctrine during their exile. He stood in the fleet command center on Haven Prime, coordinating with Admiral Foster as the ships prepared for departure. The strategy they had developed was based on careful analysis of Council military failures and human military history. The Council species make war like it's a political discussion, Parker explained to President Johnson as they watched the fleet preparations. They have traditions, honor codes, and rules of engagement that limit their effectiveness. They fight to achieve objectives, not to eliminate threats. And our approach, Johnson asked, we fight to win permanently. Every engagement is designed to reduce the enemy's ability to continue fighting. We don't capture territory or negotiate terms. We eliminate the threat completely so it can never return. Dr. Carol Davis had been analyzing the tactical data from Council battles against the Devourers. Her reports painted a grim picture of alien military incompetence when faced with an adaptive enemy that ignored traditional rules of warfare. The Devourers learned from every engagement, she explained to the fleet commanders during their final briefing. Council forces keep using the same tactics over and over, expecting different results. Their command structure is too rigid to adapt quickly enough. Commander Alex Wright had designed the human response to address these weaknesses. Our tactical doctrine emphasizes rapid adaptation and overwhelming force application. We don't give the enemy time to learn from our attacks because we destroy them too quickly. The human fleet departed Haven Prime with a message transmitted to Council forces throughout the galaxy. This is Admiral Foster of the Human Defense Fleet. We are responding to your request for assistance against the Devourer threat. Clear all civilian traffic from combat zones and prepare to coordinate with human tactical commands. The response from Council military leaders was immediate and desperate. High Counselor Thranks, speaking from a refugee ship after the fall of the Precursor. Homeworld transmitted directly to Admiral Foster. Admiral, we are grateful for your assistance. Our forces will coordinate with your fleet under any command structure you deem appropriate. The humility in Thranks' voice was striking. This was the same being who had dismissed humanity as too young and inexperienced to contribute to galactic security. Now he was offering to place ancient Precursor forces under human command without any conditions or negotiations. Captain Sarah Miller, now commanding the destroyer Swift Strike, led the advanced scout force that made first contact with Devourer vessels near the Kepler Nexus. The enemy ships were unlike anything in Council databases, appearing to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and adapt in real time. First Devourer vessel engaging our perimeter, Sarah reported to Admiral Foster. Implementing Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was a human tactical innovation that no Council species had ever attempted. Instead of engaging the enemy vessel directly, Sarah's ship launched a spread of quantum disruptor missiles that didn't target the ship itself, but rather the space around it. The weapons created localized distortions in spacetime that made it impossible for the Devourer vessel to maintain its position or adaptive defenses. The enemy ship simply vanished, not destroyed in any conventional sense, but removed from normal space entirely. The Devourer technology that had adapted to every Council weapon proved useless against an attack that didn't target the ship at all. Target eliminated, Sarah reported. No damage to our forces. Proceeding to next engagement. Zone. The efficiency of the human attack shocked both the Devourers and the Council observers. Admiral Kethanara of the Zephyrian fleet, monitoring the battle from a safe distance, transmitted her amazement to other Council commanders. The humans destroyed a Devourer hive ship in 12 seconds. I have never seen anything like it. The second engagement proved that the first victory was not luck. Commander Rita Hayes led a squadron of human cruisers against a cluster of Devourer vessels that had been consuming the remains of a Vorthan colony. The human ships moved with precision and coordination that made Council military formations look clumsy by comparison. Multiple targets locked, Rita reported. Initiating kinetic bombardment sequence. The human ships launched projectiles that traveled at significant fractions of light speed, striking their targets before the Devourer adaptive systems could react. Each projectile carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a moon, and they struck. With mathematical precision that left no room for enemy adaptation or escape, 3 Devourer hive ships were completely destroyed in less than a minute, their remains scattered across several light-years of space. The surviving Council forces watched in stunned silence as the enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for months was systematically eliminated by human tactics they had never imagined. General Parker coordinated the ground assault phase of the operation. From his command ship, while Council forces had focused entirely on ship-to-ship combat, humans had developed specialized tactics for fighting Devourers on planetary surfaces. The assault marines who deployed on the corrupted worlds wore powered armor that incorporated lessons learned from studying Council technology. Ground forces deploying on Theta Prime, reported Colonel Jim Bradley, leading the first wave of Marines. Devourer ground forms engaging our advance units. The battle that followed was broadcast to Council military observers throughout the galaxy. Human Marines moved with calculated precision through the twisted landscape that the Devourers had created, using weapons that combined kinetic force with energy discharges in ways that no alien military had ever attempted. But the most impressive aspect of the human ground assault was not their weapons or armor, but their tactical coordination. Every Marine knew exactly where every other Marine was located, and their movements were synchronized to maximize damage to enemy forces while minimizing exposure to return fire. Devourer Command Node located and eliminated, Colonel Bradley reported after 6 hours of intense fighting. Planet cleared of all enemy presence. Beginning restoration of normal matter density. The speed and completeness of human victories against the Devourers created ripple effects throughout Council. Space. Species that had spent millions of years believing in their own military superiority were forced to confront the reality that they had been completely outclassed by beings they had dismissed as primitive. Admiral Foster received constant communications from Council military leaders requesting permission to observe human tactics in action. High Counselor Threnx personally asked to assign precursor officers to human ships so they could learn from human combat methods. With respect, Counselor, Admiral Foster replied, human tactical doctrine is not something that can be learned through observation. It requires a fundamental change in how you think about warfare itself. The human fleet systematically hunted down every Devourer presence in Council space. Unlike the alien forces that had fought defensive actions and tried to contain the threat, humans pursued the enemy to their source and eliminated their ability to reproduce or spread. Captain Roy Martinez, commanding the exploration vessel New Horizon that had been converted for combat operations, led the mission that located the primary Devourer staging area. Admiral, we found their main base of operations. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. The base was not a space station or planetary installation, but rather a massive organic structure that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. It was clearly the source of all Devourer forces, and destroying it would eliminate the threat permanently. All fleet units converge on target coordinates, Admiral Foster ordered. Prepare for final engagement. President Johnson watched the battle reports from Haven Prime, knowing that this moment would determine not just the fate of the galaxy, but humanity's place in it. The final Devourer stronghold collapsed in a cascade of quantum disruptions that lit up the darkness of space like a dying star. Admiral Kate Foster watched from the bridge of the Vengeance as the massive organic structure that had spawned. Galactic threat simply ceased to exist, taking with it every trace of the alien technology that had terrorized Council space for months. All enemy contacts eliminated, reported Commander Gan Wilson from his tactical station. Long-range sensors show no Devourer signatures anywhere in the system. The threat has been completely neutralized. Kate nodded, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. The operation had taken 8 months from start to finish, but the result was exactly what human military doctrine demanded: total elimination of an existential threat. The Devourers were not defeated or contained or driven away. They were extinct, Captain. Sarah Miller transmitted from her destroyer Swift Strike, which had been conducting cleanup operations in the outer system. Admiral, we verified destruction of all Devourer breeding facilities and support structures. There's nothing left that could regenerate their forces. The thoroughness of the human victory was unprecedented in galactic military history. Council. Forces had always fought to achieve specific objectives, like capturing territory or forcing enemy surrender. But humans had pursued the Devourers to their source and eliminated their ability to ever threaten anyone again. High Counselor Threnx observed the final battle from his refugee command ship, surrounded by the remnants of the once mighty precursor fleet. The ancient being who had dismissed humanity as too young and inexperienced to contribute to galactic security now watched in stunned silence. as human forces accomplished what his civilization could not achieve in 50 million years of existence. How is this possible? Thranks asked his military advisors. The humans destroyed an enemy that consumed our most advanced technology in minutes. Their ships are smaller than ours. Their weapons appear less sophisticated, yet they achieved total victory where we failed completely. General Vexandra of the Precursor Military Command had been studying human tactical methods throughout the campaign. Her analysis painted a disturbing picture of the fundamental differences between human and alien approaches to warfare. They do not fight the same war we fight, she explained to the council leader. When we engage an enemy, we seek to defeat their military forces and achieve our political objectives. When humans engage an enemy, they seek to eliminate that enemy's capacity to threaten them ever again. The implications of this difference were staggering. Council military doctrine was based on the assumption that warfare was a tool of diplomacy, a way to achieve political goals through controlled application of force. Human military doctrine was based on the assumption that warfare was a survival mechanism, a way to ensure that threats could never return. Admiral Kate Foster received formal invitations from every major council species to address their military academies and share human tactical knowledge. The same aliens who had laughed at Jake Harrison's offer to contribute to galactic peacekeeping were now desperate to learn from human military expertise. Speaker Zix Thara, who had survived the destruction of her homeworld by evacuating to a mobile command platform, transmitted a personal message to Admiral Foster. The crystalline hegemony formally requests the establishment of joint training programs with human military forces. We offer full access to our technology and resources in exchange for instruction in human combat methods. Similar offers arrived from the Naga Collective, the Ethereal Confederation, and dozens of other species. Each message contained increasingly generous terms as the aliens competed to secure human military cooperation. President Matt Johnson convened an emergency session of the Human Leadership Council on Haven Prime to discuss the flood of alien requests. The same species that had rejected humanity's partnership 3 years earlier were now offering complete technological exchange and political concessions to gain human military support. They're offering us everything, reported Secretary of State Linda Carter, Dr. Amy Foster's replacement in the diplomatic corps. Full membership in the council with permanent leadership positions, access to all classified technologies, exclusive trading rights in multiple sectors. General Ben Parker reviewed the alien proposals with barely concealed amusement. 3 years ago, they told us we had nothing to offer their advanced civilization. Now they're willing to share their most closely guarded secrets just to learn how we fight. But the human leadership was not interested in simply extracting concessions from desperate aliens. The war against the Devourers had revealed fundamental flaws in galactic civilization that went far beyond military incompetence. Dr. Carol Davis presented her analysis of Council Society during the crisis. Their response to an existential threat was completely dysfunctional. They held committee meetings while their worlds were being consumed. They debated proper protocol while their fleets were being destroyed. They spent more time arguing about jurisdiction than actually fighting the enemy. Commander Alex Wright had observed Council military coordination throughout the campaign. Their command structure is designed for peacekeeping operations against member worlds, not for total war against an adaptive enemy. They have no experience with the kind of warfare necessary for species survival. The truth was becoming clear. To human leaders, the galactic civilization they had once sought to join was fundamentally weak and unprepared for real threats. The Council's 50 million years of peace had been possible only because no serious external threats had emerged during that time. Admiral Foster transmitted humanity's response to the Council's desperate offers from her flagship as the Human Fleet prepared to depart the battlefield. The message was broadcast on all frequencies to ensure every alien leader would receive it. This is Admiral Foster of the Human Defense Fleet addressing the Galactic Council and all member species. Humanity appreciates your offers of cooperation and technology sharing. However, we must respectfully decline your proposals for joint military programs and permanent alliance agreements. The silence that followed this announcement was profound. Council leaders had assumed that humanity would be eager to claim their place as the galaxy's dominant military power, demanding tribute and concessions from the species they had saved. Humanity has learned important lessons during our time away from Council space, Admiral Foster continued. We have discovered that our species is fundamentally different from yours, in ways that make true partnership impossible. You fight wars to achieve political objectives. We fight wars to eliminate threats permanently. You see military force as one tool among many for achieving your goals. We see military force as the ultimate guarantee of our species' survival. President Johnson had crafted the final portion of humanity's response personally, drawing on the bitter memories of Jake Harrison's humiliation and the years of exile that had followed. 3 years ago, humanity offered to share our military knowledge and tactical experience with the Galactic Council. We were told that our young species had nothing to contribute to your ancient civilization. We were dismissed as primitive and crude. We were laughed at for suggesting that humans could teach anything to beings with millions of years of experience. The human fleet began departing the battle zone as the transmission continued, their mission complete and their demonstration of superiority undeniable. Today, humanity has demonstrated the value of the knowledge you rejected. We eliminated an existential threat that your combined forces could not contain. We accomplished in months what your civilizations could not achieve in their entire history. We did this not because we seek your approval or recognition, but because the threat would eventually have reached human space. High Counselor Threnx listened to the human response with growing understanding of what the Council had lost when they dismissed humanity's original offer. The species they had rejected as inferior had proven to be the most capable military force in galactic history. Humanity will maintain cordial relations with all Council members, Admiral Foster concluded. We will continue trading relationships and cultural exchanges. But we will not integrate our military forces with yours, and we will not share our tactical knowledge with species that showed such poor judgment in rejecting our partnership when it was freely offered. The final statement was delivered with the same quiet dignity that Jake Harrison had shown during his humiliation before the Council 3 years earlier. Should the galaxy face another existential threat, you know where to find us. But humanity will no longer seek your approval or permission to defend ourselves and our allies. We have learned to stand on our own, and we will continue to do so. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again make the mistake of underestimating them. The Council had learned the truth too late. They had not expelled a naive species seeking validation. They had rejected the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, predators who fought not for glory or territory, but for the permanent security of their kind. The laughter had stopped. The truth was clear, and humanity had proven that sometimes the youngest species can teach the oldest ones the most important lessons about survival.